Hello everyone. How are you all? Are you all having fun? As we have already understood what is indirect tax. So, we are going to start with the introduction to GST. GST is the biggest taxation reform in India's history. The GST is a much newer tax. But in fact, it turns out that GST is the game changer for India's economy. And the GST has been introduced by our current government in the month of July in 2017 by saying the term one nation, one tax, one market. Before introduction of GST, there were multiple taxes on goods and services in our country. Taxes like CST, VAT, excise duty, service tax were there. And instead of all those taxes, there is now only one tax, GST. And so students, now we can say that one nation, one tax. Right? Now the question arises that why one market? Because the government said one nation, one tax, one market. So why one market? Earlier there were VAT laws, which used to be different for each state. Like on the same product, different taxes were being applied in different states, alright? Which means that the tax rate on a mobile phone will be different in X state when compared to tax rate on mobile with another Y state. And because of the high tax in some state, the product would be expensive in that state. And due to less tax rate in some state, it would be cheaper in that state. And therefore, each of the state in our country had its own separate market. Like this is the market of this state and this very market is of this state. So there were different markets. It wasn't related to the other markets. Am I clear? Because in other markets of other states, goods were being sold at different rates. To be honest, we used to discuss about transforming into a global market. But were we even a national market to begin with? No, we were divided because each state in our country had its own market. But now with the introduction of GST, there's only one tax rate across the nation. So now the entire India is one market, right? You can buy from anywhere. You will get the product at a single unified rate. So now we can actually say that yes, it is indeed one nation, one tax, and one market. Moving on. Let's start with our first topic, and it's the genesis of GST in India. So the meaning of genesis is origin. Its origin, how did this GST start? What do you think? The implementation of GST was done suddenly without any prior discourse? No, it did not happen like that. Do you know that to bring GST? The preparation was going on for many years, okay? And after all those preparation, GST came into existence. In the year 2004, Indian government formed a particular committee, which was called the Calcutta Task Force. And the committee was asked, this committee which was formed was asked, please guide us that what kind of GST should be introduced in our country. It was not asked whether India needs GST or not because by 2004 the government was ready to introduce GST in India. Meaning it was already decided that GST had to be implemented. And now you must have been wondering that God knows how long the preparations of GST have been going on. Because by 2004, the government was already prepared to introduce GST. Why was Calcutta Task Force formed? To discuss about the kind of GST that should be implemented. When the question comes about the kind of GST to be implemented, you might wonder, are there different kinds of GST? Sweet GST, spicy GST. So okay, let's start with understanding different kinds of GST that are present on a global scale. So when we will be discussing about GST, then GST can be of three types on global scale. National GST, State GST, and third is dual GST. Let's start with national GST. The national GST refers to the central government being in complete power for collection of GST. What is state GST? A GST law will be made where entire power with regards to GST will reside with who? With the state government. And third one is dual GST. Dual GST means that both the central government and the state government has the right to levy and to collect GST. So, I hope you have understood that there could have been these three kinds of GST in our country. So, this Calcutta Task Force was formed to suggest the type of GST that should be introduced in our country Now let's find out what this committee had suggested. First point is, it has now been more than a decade, in fact more than 2 decades, right? Since the idea of National Goods and Services Tax was mooted by Kelkar Task Force in 2004. National Goods and Services Tax. Kelkar Task Force recommended implementation of national GST. The task force strongly recommended fully integrated GST on national basis. They suggested there should be a fully integrated GST which will be controlled by one place, and that would be the central government. Let's bring national GST. I will share about the part where I was mentioning repeatedly that the preparation of GST has been going for a long time and now it came. But why the implementation was delayed by so much? The reason is that Kelkar Task Force suggested which GST? Implementation of national GST. And central government will have this power. Right? But now this is where the problem arises. Because the state governments were never willing to give this power to the central government. Why is that? So are you aware of the powers that the state government beholds? Do you know this? In our country, central government holds most of the power. And the state government has majorly 2 powers. Are we clear till here? One is fiscal power. Other is police. As you must have seen, there is UP police, MP police, Maharashtra police. You must have heard this, right? Why is it so? Because police is under state government. So this is one of the powers that they have. And another one is the power of collection of the taxes, revenue collection. Fiscal power means the power of revenue collection. They had some revenue collection power. GST is levied on goods and services. Let's discuss what used to happen before the introduction of the GST. So you will understand that state governments had some powers related to revenue. So in regard with these goods and services, the state government had some power. So as soon as Kelkar Task Force mentioned the introduction of the national GST, then all state governments protested and said, what will be left with us? Right? Let me explain this to you. So goods and services. So in earlier times, before the introduction of GST, there were 2 types of taxes levied on goods and services. One was imposed on the manufacturing, and the second one was on sales. Meaning if you are a manufacturer and when you will manufacture products, then you will pay the tax for the manufacturing. If you sell goods, you will pay tax for selling. The tax imposed on manufacturing was called excise duty. Now you must wonder if it's necessary to remember this? No. It's neither necessary to know, nor is it necessary to remember all this. But if we won't know their history, we can't understand the present story. What was the issue? Why did it take so long for introduction of GST? So you'd question, Kelkar Task told that GST will come in 2004, but it was implemented in 2017. As I said, the state government had objections. They told they won't let national GST come in India, it is not acceptable. So why will national GST not be introduced? Let's understand. Excise duty was implied on manufacturing and on the sales. Now sale, it depended on which sale was it. Is it intrastate or interstate? The meaning of intrastate is within the state. Goods are sold within the state. Interstate means goods are sold from one state to another, like goods are being sold from Bihar to UP. Suppose the supplier is from Bihar and recipient is from UP. Or if supplier is from UP and recipient is from Bihar, the receiver is from where? Bihar. Then this will be called interstate. Intrastate means within state. Here the supplier and recipient both are from same state. Supplier is one who is selling the goods and recipient is buying the goods. When supplier and receiver are from same state, then it is an intrastate. Interstate means it's one state to other. Right, like this. Excise duty. We know that the excise duty was imposed on manufacturing. Now let's discuss this, what was imposed on intrastate. It's VAT. Which tax was imposed on sale of interstate? CST. VAT is for value added tax. And CST stands for central sales tax. Okay? And now the question is, which tax was levied on services? So it was service tax. You should know that earlier to whom this revenue belonged to. There were three taxes that were being imposed on the goods: excise duty on manufacturing, then VAT and CST on sales, and service tax on services. Central government collected excise duty. Central government collected the service tax. But do you know who collected VAT and CST taxes? It's the state government. Don't get confused. VAT is value added tax, CST is central sales tax. CST sounds like it's related to central government, but it's not. So repeating this again, central sales tax or CST was collected by the state government. State government had both of these things. But the central government is suggesting to do what? It is saying that what we will do is, on both of these, we will bring one tax. So many taxes that presently exist, 1, 2, 3, 4, will replace all of them with only one tax, that is GST. This will be national GST and central government will be responsible for collecting these tax. So naturally state government objected on this. They said, how can be this possible? We already have no major powers. If you also take away these taxes from the states, then we will be left with just the police. Right. So the government was not prepared for the national GST. So do you know what finally came in our nation then? What was implemented in our country? Dual GST. When Modi ji's party came to power in 2014. Okay? So when Modi ji's party first came to power in 2014, and Modi ji declared at that time that we will bring GST, dual GST, and now the state government agreed. State government finally agreed. However, let me tell you this, that the year 2014 was such a time when BJP party came to power in majority. Okay, even in center. Whose government was it? It was BJP's government, and in the majority of the states also there was BJP's government. So there wasn't major conflict. State government was also in agreement because BJP was in the power in states and also at central government. Right? The whole country was being ruled by one political party. Right? So this was one major reason, and another major reason was that the government said they would bring in dual GST. So in the dual GST, both the central and the state governments will have the power to levy GST simultaneously. A tax for both. So until now, there were two taxes for state and two taxes for central. Now all this will be combined in GST, but we will share it. So this was the reason that GST came into existence in our country. If even today, if we would have been adamant about national GST, then this day where we are witnessing GST would never come. Let's move on to next point. Subsequently, the then Union Finance Minister. Finance Minister at that time was P. Chidambaram. In fact, I would say that during the Congress time, a lot of budgets were presented by Mr. Chidambaram, right? In fact, for majority of times, P. Chidambaram was our finance minister under the rule of Congress. Okay? So when he was presenting budget for 2006 and 7, during that presentation, it was already announced that the GST will be launched and implemented from April 1 in 2010. By this, I want to tell you that the GST was implemented on July 1, 2017. Keep this in mind. The launch date was announced earlier during the Congress government. In the 2006 and 2007 budget, P. Chidambaram said that we will implement GST from 1st of April 2010. Right? But did the GST was launched on April 1st, 2010? You know that it didn't. In 2010, when P. Chidambaram presented budget, he announced that GST will be introduced from 2011. Then in 2011, it was said that it will come in 2012. And then they did not say anything. In 2012 budget, they didn't mention anything, just said we will introduce GST soon. Okay. The Congress government also said the same in the 2013 budget that GST will come soon. And then in 2014, BJP's government came to power. Modi ji's government came to power, right? So, these were some dates we wanted to tell you about. The date for the launch was already announced, but the GST itself was never launched. Since then, the GST missed several deadlines. It again gained momentum when the BJP came to power in 2014. The topic of GST almost died down. It was announced for the year 2010. Its momentum remained till 2011, but gradually it died down. As BJP's government came, this matter came up again. The matter of GST was brought up again, and later it became a matter of discussion. Internationally, GST was first introduced in France. Do you know about the first ever implementation of GST in entire world? It was in France in 1954. And now more than 160 countries have introduced GST. After that, understand like this, it was first introduced in France and then almost 160 countries had already implemented GST. And then after that, the GST was launched in India. This means we were late in implementing GST. 160 countries around the world had already launched GST when India did. Let me tell you something. India was preparing to bring GST. Our country wanted to bring GST. But when the BJP's government came to power, why did the speed of bringing GST increased? You might have also seen that in fact our PM, Modi ji, is actually trolled for traveling abroad a lot and building international relations. He's really doing it. Right? This isn't even false. And when you have to live in a society, then you will also have to live according to the norms of society. Why am I saying this? The world is a society. And in this, each and every country is an individual. And so, a country has to follow the rules of the world. I will explain this in your way, okay? Suppose you do something different from society, then your father will say that don't do such thing or society will not like this. What will people say? Right? Just think about it. After you attend this class today, if you go and tell your parents that mom, dad, I don't want to study anymore. I'll stop my studies, I'll find something else. Maybe now that you're a grown-up, they might not say anything, but if you would have been in class 5, demanding that you don't want to study anymore, you would get a slap. Everyone's studying, how can you not? Do you want to bring me disgrace? So you cannot do anything which is different. GST was already implemented in the whole world. It was implemented in 160 countries. Don't you think that India would have become a joke? That means the whole world would say, look, it's India. This is that country, the one that does not have GST. So it would have been strange for us, right? So this was again a pressure. Apart from several other things, this was also a pressure that we live in a society. The world is a society and every country is an individual that has to abide by the rules of society. Right? So, let me tell you one more thing to explain this. There is a BJP leader, Subramanian Swamy. Right? And he's the one who has said this many times that the income tax should be abolished in our country. Should be removed. But our government, now let me tell you this first, that Modi ji himself favors this idea. Because Baba Ramdev also favors this, who is a close friend of Modi ji. And in fact, Modi ji also agrees with this idea, but he has a fear. He says that let a developed country abolish income tax first. Then we'll do it. Let's observe the impact on their country. And when I say this, I know you will object, saying, some Gulf countries who don't charge income tax. But hold on there. Listen carefully. Those Gulf countries are the kind where the sources of income are only one or two. It's mostly extracting petrol or diesel, and only these businessmen are making money. No one else is earning anything. Right? So these countries only has tax imposed on specific areas. If you have petrol or diesel company, you'll pay the tax others won't. Income tax exists. It's not like it's absent. Right? We can't compare our economy with theirs. Our government suggests that let US economy abolish it. We'll see the effects in US over the next few years when they abolish income tax, and then we will do it too. What I wanted to say that it's really the global picture that we need to foresee. Without that, it cannot be done. And therefore, in our country, we had to bring GST. See, next point. Most of the countries, depending on their own socio-economic formation, have introduced a unified GST. National GST is also called unified GST. Unified GST, that is national level GST levy by center. Or dual GST simultaneous levy by the center and state. India has adopted the dual GST model. India enforces the dual GST. This dual GST is implemented into other countries, Canada and Brazil. Okay. You should do one thing. Remember all these things. We will also remember these historical facts. You might have some MCQ questions in your exam. So to answer those, you need to know about these things. Like GST was first introduced in France in 1954. National level GST is implemented in all of the countries. Only in 3 countries dual GST is implemented. Canada, Brazil and then India. Right? Moving on to Power to tax GST constitutional provisions. As I have told you that the constitution of our nation stands as ultimate supreme authority. So if our constitution gives the power that law like GST can be enacted and through it the tax can be collected, only then it is possible for such a law, otherwise not. So if we would not write this thing about the GST in the constitution of our nation and simply start collecting taxes, then will this be valid? No, such a law will be considered as null and void. It will not be even considered a law. First of all, we will need to edit the constitution. We need to amend our constitution. Then we can make a law called GST. Okay, our constitution will give the power to enact such a law called GST, and that the same law can be used to collect the taxes. When constitution will give us that much power, then the progress can be made. So you would also have understood this, that when the GST law was implemented on the 1st of July in 2017, so before that, there must have been changes made in the constitution. Let's look at them. The Constitution 101st Amendment Act 2016, as notified on 8th of September in the year 2016. In our constitution, before the implementation of GST initially, Indian constitution had already been amended 100 times. I mean to say our constitution was made in 1950 and GST was implemented in July 2017. Okay, so before the amendment for the GST, before these amendments for the GST, there were already 100 amendments done in the constitution. So already 100 amendments had taken place. Now do you know what was the amendment number for GST? It was 101st amendment. It is such an auspicious number. 101. Okay, 101. Okay, it was amendment number 101 of the Constitution through which the GST was brought in. And this was notified on 8 September 2016, which actually made GST possible, which paved the way for the implementation of GST. This amendment, it added a new article to the Constitution. There are many articles in Constitution, like Article 1, 2, 3 and 4 in the Constitution. So a new article was added, 246A. Right? Now I will explain why Article 246A was added, because there was already an Article 246 in our Constitution. Okay, now in this Article 246, there are many schedules, among which is the 7th schedule, which has 3 lists. List 1, List 2 and List 3. The first list is called the Union list. The second one is called the State list, and the third one is called the Concurrent list. In which, if you will see, what has been done here is that this is where all the matters are defined, in which it is explained which government will be controlling it. Okay, right? Which government will collect the taxes. Like Union list means that all the matters which comes within this, its power, basically power related to these matters, belongs to the central government. All the matters that is there in this list, the state government holds the power and control over these matters. Now if we look at the concurrent list, all the power regarding the matters in this list is with whom? Central government and the state government. Let me explain about this. Means if any revenue item is listed in the Union list, then central government will collect tax. If written in this list, then state government will take tax. But if there are any taxes written on this list, then they will sometimes go to central government, sometimes to state government. Sometimes central, sometimes state. For example, stamp duty is a tax in this. Now I paid the stamp duty. So I paid a stamp duty of 100 rupees. Now either that is of central government or state government. Now you'll ask, sir, to whom does it belong? I'll tell you. So this stamp duty is paid on many matters. Like when we make partnership deed, we pay stamp duty. If we are registering land, we will have to pay. We will pay even while making any rent agreement. So there are certain matters specified. If the matter is this, then it's the stamp duty, and X government will take. And if stamp duty is for this matter, then Y government will take. There are certain matters whose stamp duty goes to the central government, and there are certain matters whose stamp duty will go to the state government. So whatever matters stamp duty is paid, based on that matter we will decide this belongs to which government. So whenever I pay the duty for items which is on the concurrent list, the revenue goes either to the central government or to the state government. Alright, so now comes what is GST. GST is a tax. Specifically, it is dual GST that came to our country. Okay. When we buy an item worth of 100 rupees and if GST is applied on it, let's say of 18%. So in that there is 9 rupees of CGST also in this. You will learn all about this when we go ahead. And 9 rupees will be charged as SGST. It will be 118. Or if you don't understand this yet, you can think of it like 18 rupees GST will be levied, out of which 9 goes to central and 9 to state government. So half is for central government and half is for state government. Whenever GST is levied, half goes to them both. So this is simultaneous levy. So whenever I pay GST, it is not going to either to central government or state government. Half goes to central government and half goes to state government. Was there any other tax like this in our country until now? Let's think about it. In this list, whatever tax was there, central government was taking. Here all the taxes were taken by state government. The tax in this was sometimes taken by the central and sometimes by state government. Like 100 rupees will either be taken fully by central government or fully by the state government. But GST is a tax where if I paid 100 rupees GST, okay, GST of 100 rupees, then 50 would be taken by the central government and 50 would be taken by state government. But there was no such law in our country before. There was nothing like this. So this Article 246 would not have served the purpose because this does not even talk about such a system. Therefore, a new article had to be added to introduce GST. They couldn't just change the existing article, so they had to bring in a new article, Article 246A. And then they stated that there will be a kind of tax where there will be simultaneous levy. Both the governments will get the tax simultaneously. Let's see. So the Article 246A has been inserted in the Constitution, which is as under. Article 246A1 and A2. Okay. So A1 is for intrastate supply. Okay. And A2 is for interstate supply. Okay. Intra means within the state. And inter means from one state to another. Okay. Now here it is written one that is intrastate within the state. On that the parliament and the legislature of every state has the power. Okay, parliament means? Basically the parliament has the union government, the central government, and who is in our legislative assembly? The state government. So now the parliament that is there and legislature of every state, both of them will have power related to intrastate supply. So in short, it is saying that in GST, for intrastate supply or say within state supply, both central and state governments have the power. Okay, now the Article 246A2 says that the power for interstate trade lies with the central government, that is with the parliament. However, don't assume that revenue from interstate goes directly to the central government. The entire GST revenue is shared between central and state governments. We'll discuss how and what happens in detail. In interstate revenue is first collected by central government, but then a portion of it is given back to state government. The state gets its portion, and as far as intrastate supply is concerned, half of the revenue goes to each. Half of the revenue goes to state government and half to the central government. It goes away at that point only. Okay? Okay, so what will happen is that in many places you will start to feel like, sir told all these things abruptly. Okay. I was trying to pay attention, but until then this discussion was over. But you don't worry. Actually, whenever you feel that something is happening abruptly, then that is happening that way deliberately. Okay? Now if you see, I have so much experience of teaching that I am very well aware of this thing, that which part will children understand completely, which part will they understand partially, and which part will they not understand at all. And also that what all will come to your mind. When you will be listening to me, then what all things will be coming into your mind. Now as you will gradually progress through the course with me, you will find that you will not face any problems at all. Right? And not just this, in fact, some questions that you will think about later, like what you learned from me today. Maybe it's not in your mind right now, but 2 days later if you revise it, then it might come to your mind. So I will even tell you those things myself, that you can also think like this. Right? So as much logical thinking and critical thinking could be there, so all of that you get to know beforehand, even before it comes to your mind. You already know the answer to all the questions. Okay? So this is how I teach. Those who have already learned income tax with me in the past, they must be knowing this. And if you haven't learned yet, then you can start income tax also parallelly. Right? You can even start income tax parallelly. So income tax and GST you can cover together. Okay. Now we come to the extent and commencement. Is this law applicable to the entire country or is it limited to an extent? So you see, before the BJP government came in power in India, Jammu and Kashmir was a special category state. Do you know that even if a law was applied in the entire country, it was not applicable in Jammu and Kashmir? The Jammu and Kashmir state government used to decide everything there. Means even if there's a central law, you still have to ask state government. It was called a special category state. Right. Now the reason that why was it like this there? I don't want to go into that because the situation of Kashmir in itself was so different. Just understand that we had to give them this kind of privilege, right? Now you might know that the special category status of Jammu and Kashmir has also been removed. Now that is also a normal state just like other states. And you will be happy to have this information that GST is basically that law which applies to the whole country. Okay? Now today every law is applicable in whole country, but earlier it was like this. It extends to whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. Now you see, it is very fortunate of you that you were not born in that time. Okay? Or you are not studying in that era where you have to study all this. Okay? You are studying in an era where you know India as united country and you have seen India as undivided India. Okay? It extends to the whole of India. So it has come into force on July 1st, 2017. One thing I want to tell you is when GST came into effect on July 1st, 2017, situation was same on that day. It extends to whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. I remember. It was a sad thing. But on July 8th, GST law was extended to Jammu and Kashmir on July 8, 2017. On July 8, it was implemented in J&K. It took only 7 days. On 8th day, it was even in Jammu and Kashmir. The law changed again that day. It extends to the whole of India. Right. However, different dates have been appointed for the applicability of different provisions of GST. Let me tell you why GST came into effect in Jammu and Kashmir. Why did it come? Let me explain. Like I am from UP. Okay, I am from UP. Raj sir is from UP. I have purchased some goods from Maharashtra. Okay, someone from Maharashtra sold it to me. For how much? Its cost was 100 rupees plus 18 rupees GST on it, so 118 rupees. Now listen, what did Raj sir do here? It had a GST of 18 rupees and Raj sir sold same product for 150 rupees. Then how much GST will be on it? If the GST rate is 18%, so 18% of 150 will be 27, so 27 rupees will be the GST. And sold for 177. This is Raj sir's purchase, 100 plus 18, 118 is Raj sir's purchase and Raj sir's sales is 150 plus 27, 177 rupees. But do you know, when I do this transaction, I have to pay GST to the government. Do you know how much GST we have to pay to government? Do you know how much? I have collected 27 rupees of GST from my customer. We don't pay 27 rupees to government. 18 rupees of GST which I paid on the purchase, I get to deduct that. I can deduct the GST which I paid at the time when I purchased the product. So how much GST do I pay to government? I collected 27 from the customer, I paid 18 to the supplier. 9 rupees are left, we will pay 9 rupees to the government. GST. See, the trader does not have to pay GST from their own pocket. They have to pay GST by collecting it. Okay. Now tell me, as a businessman, how much GST did we collect? 27 rupees. Okay. So, I paid 18 rupees to the supplier. Was that GST from my own pocket? No. I said no businessman pays GST from his own pocket. We will pay to the government as much as we collect from the concerned person. So, we'll pay that same amount of GST to the government or to the old trader, to whoever. So, we have paid 18 rupees GST. Government says you collected 27 rupees, you have already paid 18 rupees to a trader, now pay us 9 rupees. Does it make sense? If J&K did not have GST, what would have happened? Is Jammu and Kashmir a backward state? Earlier it was very backward. Okay, growth is happening slowly. And I pray to God that it grow more and more in future. That J&K, J&K has that potential. It has a potential to become the world's biggest destination for tourism. I am not saying this without any proof. Okay, no. I have traveled a lot internationally. I've been to the beautiful places in the world, including Kashmir. Okay. Switzerland is called heaven on earth. Okay, yes, I have seen. I went to Switzerland too. I stayed there for a week and explored a lot. It's beautiful, no doubt. Yes, it's beautiful, no doubt. But believe me, our Kashmir is even more beautiful than that. Until now, nothing could happen in Kashmir, but now that special category state status has been removed, this has come under the control of the central government. Now central government has power on it. As it is now under central government, there's a possibility that when it will grow, it could become the world's biggest tourist destination, where our country can earn a lot of money. Now the question was, Jammu and Kashmir is a backward state. Okay. Let's say the product we are getting in Maharashtra was also available in Jammu and Kashmir at the same price, 118 rupees. So, would we buy from Jammu and Kashmir? No, we would not have purchased because Jammu and Kashmir would not apply GST on 100 rupees, as the state would not have GST. What was levied before? Prior to the implementation of the Goods and Services Tax, CST was levied on interstate sales. Let's assume the rate was also 18%, okay? We are assuming rate was 18%. So Jammu and Kashmir is selling this good for 118 rupees. But if they are imposing CST and giving to me, then I will not buy it. Why? Because when we sell this item for 177 rupees by applying GST on it, because we are in UP, we will sell with GST. So when we sell it for 177 rupees, we won't be able to deduct 18 rupees CST from 27 GST. GST is deducted from GST. Oh my God, the GST on the purchase would be deducted from the GST on the sale and we would have to pay 9 rupees. But CST is applicable, so it won't be deducted, meaning after taking 27, I will have to pay 27 rupees. So this would be a loss, right? My loss is 18 rupees. Did you understand this? When I will collect 27 rupees from here, then I will have to give 27 rupees. But when I was purchasing goods from Maharashtra, I had to pay only 9 rupees. If I will buy the same goods from Jammu and Kashmir and sell, then I will have to pay 27 rupees. Even if the Jammu and Kashmir gives it to me for 5 rupees less, I will refuse. An extra 18 rupees GST is being charged. Extra tax has to be paid to government. If they will give 18 rupees cheaper, then we can think about it. Right, there won't be that much of a difference for 18%. So, if someone was buying goods from Jammu and Kashmir, then in that case, if the goods from Jammu and Kashmir were cheaper by 18 to 20%, then only people will buy or they will not buy. Even if J&K will give at the same rate, it will not sell. J&K government's revenue would have decreased even more. This means Jammu and Kashmir would be left behind. There would be unemployment and other issues. Forget about taxes. Don't you think entire state's economy will collapse if there is no business in that state? What I mean is, if we do not buy goods from Jammu and Kashmir, then their factories will be closed. The workers will not get salary. That state will become poorer. Yes or no? So it was backward and would become more backward by the time. Therefore, the Jammu and Kashmir state government felt that not implementing GST would be a mistake and they would fall further behind. That's why they implemented GST. India is a summation of 3 categories of territories. India has 3 types of territories. Okay, 3 types. As you know already that we say India is made up of various states. We have states here. And there are many union territories. So you might say, sir, there are 2 categories. Alright, 2 categories. 2 kind of territory. No. Actually, there are 28 states in India and 8 union territories, but these 8 union territories are not the same. Some union territories are with legislatures. And some union territories are without a legislature. Union territories with legislature means that those union territories have their own legislature. Okay, understood? Those union territories who have a chief minister, like Delhi. Delhi is a union territory, do you know this? But it has a chief minister. Delhi has its own elections and legislature. So these are some union territories, but some union territories do not have their own legislature or chief minister. They are run by the central government. If you didn't know this yet, then you should know this today. Okay, there are 3 union territories in union territories with legislatures category. Delhi, Puducherry. You don't call this Pondicherry anymore. It's changed. So Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir. Do you know Jammu and Kashmir used to be a state before? Do you know this? Upon revocation of its special status, central government made it a union territory. Okay, J and K was in fact divided. It underwent a significant administrative restructuring, being divided into 2 distinct union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and second Ladakh. Ladakh is such union territory that will be directly administered by the central government. And actually all the dispute used to take place in Ladakh. This particular action can be seen as a highly intelligent maneuver by the government. First, what they did with Ladakh, they made it a union territory instead of state. Okay, so its controlling power went to the central government. Now, Jammu and Kashmir has been established with its own legislative body because government can't make so many decisions all of a sudden, right? So, it is with a legislature. And Ladakh, where there were a lot of disputes and problems, it was brought under government control and it is without legislature now. So this is Jammu and Kashmir. And which are the union territories without legislatures? They are Andaman and Nicobar, Chandigarh, Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. Many children might have studied geography long time ago. They may think Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu are separate. So for their information, these were previously separate union territories but that have been merged. Now its name is Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. Okay, Lakshadweep and Ladakh. You can also remember the name. Okay, and you know about the other states. So there are 28 states and there are 3 union territories with legislatures. And in GST, these 3 union territories with legislatures are given the status of states. Okay? Meaning for the purpose of GST, these are considered states. Although these are union territories, please listen carefully, these are union territories but in GST. They have been granted state status here. So, whenever we talk about the states in GST, it's not only about 28 states, but also about the 3 union territories with legislature. So you can understand for the purpose of GST. For the purpose of GST, how many states are there? There are 31 states and 5 union territories, okay? It is only for the purpose of GST, okay? Please keep in mind, or we have 8 union territories, don't you modify the geography of India. Okay, right? When we talk about states in GST, then it means we are referring to 28 states and 3 union territories, okay? In GST, those 3 union territories have been given the status of a state because operations there are similar to a state. Okay. Okay, I think this was enough for today's class. We'll end today's class here. We'll come in the next class and then discuss further. Okay, bye.